Hello, Dwight Norris here of Fishing at Work, and today we're going to be talking about bluegill lures. Now you probably live near a great water source or a body of water that has fish, and most likely it has bluegills in it. Bluegills or pumpkin seeds or a bream, crappie, or some type of panfish. And you probably thought, people always try to fish for these with worms or maybe a bug or something like that. Something live, because it's so easy to catch. They eat it immediately and get to catch a fish. It's great for your kids when they're starting out. You know they're out there, you know they're hungry, they're always hungry, and that they'll bite something like a worm, and a small little piece of worm too, so you can be very economical. But what kind of lures do you use specifically for bluegill, which are very prominent here in Boston, but also where I used to live in Virginia? So I presume that most of the eastern seaboard, lakes and rivers and pretty much everything else that's not saltwater has a bluegill in it. And let's talk about which lures that we want to use. So I just recently bought something online from a person who actually makes lures. So it's not like a Strike King or a Hidden or some other major brand. It's a small company, and they make nice little jigs with spinners. And I was like, I'm looking for a type of beetle spin. So this one in particular has a jig, a very small jig. I believe it's a 1/16 of an ounce, 1/16. It has a curly tail. It's green. You know, that's what he sold it with. I didn't really want the grub. I have my own grubs and other types of baits, and I really just wanted the spinner and the jig itself, and it was very cheap and economical. But this is one of the baits I've used since I was a kid to catch bluegills. It's small enough, it's light enough, it gets them attracted by using the spinner. You really want a reactive bite, so you want something going by fast. It has to be flashy, it has to be small, and baits like this are great for bluegill if you want to use lures instead of a worm. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it being eaten up and you have to buy another worm, because that's harder to do. In the past, I've found that using ones that are white, that kind of mimic very small minnows, is definitely the best way to go. I actually have one in here currently, but I'm kind of curious why the maker of this actually made them in green. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's something I don't know. And I always like to find out things that I don't know and see if there's something to it. Maybe green is a great color. I know it's a great color for worms, but for a grub, yes, maybe a grub is green, maybe a grub is brown, maybe it swims just like that, maybe just a reaction bite, who knows. But we're gonna try this out and see what happens. Now, if you're wondering what other kind of bluegill baits there are a variety of baits. One is the spinner type with the jig, or you can use the jig by itself and you can use a curly tail one like this one, or you can use a tube bait. And a tube bait is just a cylindrical kind of thing, and usually it has, the outside has been cut into like 10 or 12 pieces, and it makes the little dangles all the way around the tube, and that kind of gives it flashes and moves. And sometimes a fish can be confused of whether it's a curly tail or maybe it's a bunch of little tiny fish, or maybe it's a school, and along with the spinner it works very well. Sorry about the children talking here, they're just walking by. Maybe I should choose a less populated area, but this is where I am. I have the time, so I'm making the time to make the video. Other types of lures. So we talked about, use live bait, use crickets, use maggots, use worms. Pretty much anything that falls in the water is great if it's live. But for this, you want to stick to grubs and tubes. Now you can, use very small minnows, but they're hard to actually find those in most fishing stores. That size they don't really stick to that size, but these are bluegill you're trying to catch. And when you're trying to catch fish and you're trying to catch big fish, you should always use a larger bait. Just like a largemouth bass, a bluegill will bite something that's very large. So if you can possibly go to the store and get them to give you the smallest minnows they have available from that group, it's usually a variance of a bit, and most of them are made for bass, but there are some smaller ones in there that you could use and get a nice minnow bucket and use them for bluegill. Or maybe you'll catch a bass. Maybe you'll catch something else. Crappie. A crappie will definitely eat something almost as big as it. Because his mouth is a little bigger. Bluegill's mouth is definitely made to be smaller. But you can do the same thing with a type of minnow bait. Like I've told you, worms and minnow baits are the best baits to use for bass. They're also the best to use for panfish. So I definitely have seen some micro minnow baits. I'm talking like an inch long, and they're skinny. Maybe they have treble hooks, maybe they have something smaller, but those are great and you could use those. They will try to bite it and they'll get hung up in those treble hooks and they will get caught because they kind of curl toward a bait. They try to bite it and they try to retreat back toward where they were. You probably see this a lot with crappie or when a bass tries to eat something off the surface. It doesn't want to jump, it wants to grab it and come right back down and hide so the other bass doesn't try to steal the bait that it's trying to eat. Or, you know, it's always a battle out there for territory and also for forage. So everything tries to retreat before it becomes bait as well. It's like that old video where you see one fish eats another fish, eats another fish, eats another fish. This is the reason why they attack and then retreat immediately. You never know, there's a lunker bass right behind you and you're a bluegill and you go after that minnow and then the lunker bass pops out of the weeds and eats you. And then the fisherman's like, double hell yeah, this is awesome. I've never had that happen before, but I would like to see it. Another great lure, which I haven't gotten yet, is a kind of a spinner. I think it's called a spinner. It's basically a cylindrical vise with a single blade, and sometimes double. I've seen double for like muskies and stuff. Those really big, large ones, but a single blade, and the blade spins around the cylindrical part, and on the cylindrical part you have a single treble hook in the end. And one company that's really good at making this is Panther Martin. I will be purchasing some of those. They have group sets that are great for bass and trout. They have group sets that are smaller and have different color and forage for smaller things like panfish. So for a bass you would want a quarter ounce or an 1/8 ounce, and then for panfish you'll want a 1/16 of an ounce or a 32nd of an ounce. I'm talking like super small. But when you do that, make sure when you're fishing with your little rod here that you're using very lightweight. Once you get down to the 1/16 of an ounce here, you try to cast really far, you might realize that the weight of the lure might not be able to catch it, and then the wind catches it and then makes a nice little bird nest for you to pull out. And you know, as people who don't have time to fish and we need to fish effectively, we don't have time for a bird's nest. So make sure you use the right line with the right gear. So I honestly should have 6-pound test or less monofilament or whatever braided, and I think I have 10, or no, I have 8. Yes, I have 8. 8, yes. And that might be a little bit too heavy. And I've seen some issues with my smaller Rapala lures Rapala minnows that I've been using, like that Rapala Countdown 5 that I have. And when it's windy out here, it's not fun. I have to make sure I go with the wind, which kind of stinks because it means I have to move instead of moving the rod. So those are the basic types of lures that you can use basic type of bluegill lures that you can use when you're going fishing. And those will work for panfish, any other panfish as well. You should give it a try. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So you go out there, you catch yourself a bluegill. And like I just stated before, hey, maybe a bass will bite this. A bass that's the same size as a bluegill. So bluegill lures can be used for bass, but not the size bass that you're thinking about. But you never know. A big boy might just grab this thing. Not quite sure what it thought this was, but it's a baby bass, so I'm going to get it back in the water pronto. Hey there, we got the bluegill on the bluegill lure. What do you know? It does work. I'm really knocking them out here. This is really working. This green grub. I'm not sure what it is. I know that they're around these rocks and not around the flat spots near that bridge or the lily pads. But these rocks, they're loving it. And this is the exact same spot where I caught that crappie a long time ago. The next catch is this nice perch, a white perch. Wow, what are you doing here? Oh yeah, we're right next to the ocean. So little boys like you are trying to grow up before you get out there. Man, this thing is tearing it up. Bluegill lures are awesome, and you can use them for just about everything, but they're going to be around this size depending on the size that you do. That's why maybe you want to use a spinnerbait or a spinner type lure that covers
So we caught some bass, some bluegill, and some perch. There are some other things out here. There's a striped perch, which looks like a zebra. There's a red eye, I believe it's called. There are some bream, and there are pumpkin seeds, which I've caught a lot near my house. But in a pretty quick amount of time, less than 30 minutes, I've caught a substantial amount of fish on this experimental spinner bluegill lure. So if you're thinking about getting bluegill lures for yourself, then it's a great idea. They don't work as well as using worms and such, but they love that spinner and they love the grub or a tube bait, which I didn't get to try, but I'll try in my next video about this topic. And you'll see that they both work very well. So, Dwight Norris of Fish Network, signing out.